In the darkest corner of the Andromeda Galaxy, where even starlight fears to venture, there exists a peculiar document labeled Species Warning, Humans, Approach with Extreme Caution. This document, stored in the deepest vaults of the Galactic Federation's archives, begins with a simple yet profound observation. The most dangerous beings in the universe aren't those who seek to destroy, they're those who don't even realize what they're capable of. The year was 3157 by Earth's calendar, when Martha Higgins, a retired schoolteacher from Sussex with a passion for artisanal winemaking, inadvertently triggered the collapse of the most formidable empire the galaxy had ever known. The Silicoth, those magnificent golden beings who had ruled the cosmos with unwavering authority for 10,000 years, never saw it coming. How could they? Their sophisticated threat detection systems were designed to spot warships and energy weapons, not a cheerful grandmother bearing a bottle of what she proudly called her special elderberry vintage. The Silicoth had always prided themselves on their diplomatic protocols. When the small human colony ship established itself on the edges of their territory, they followed standard procedure, intimidating display of force followed by careful negotiations. What they hadn't counted on was Martha's insistence that, "You can't properly negotiate without a proper drink, love." The events that followed would later be described in the Federation's archives as the Great Glittering Catastrophe. Within hours of Martha's well-intentioned offering being introduced into the Silicoth central hydration system, the Empire's most elite warriors were discovered performing what they claimed was interpretive dance in the sacred halls of their high command. Their supreme leader, a being so dignified that they were said to float rather than walk, was found making snow angels in a pile of ceremonial stardust. But this was just the beginning of humanity's accidental reign of chaos across the stars. As news of the Silicoth's spectacular downfall spread through the galaxy, other civilizations began to view humans with a mixture of terror and fascination. Here was a species that had achieved what countless military campaigns had failed to do, and they had done it with a beverage that, as Martha would later insist, hadn't even won first prize at the village fair. The Galactic Federation's Emergency Council convened in what historians would later call the Panic Session. Beings from across the cosmos gathered in their grand crystalline chamber, their tentacles, appendages, and various sensory organs all aquiver with anxiety. The topic? What to do about the humans? The same humans who had, in the span of just one Earth year, managed to not only topple the Silicoth, but also accidentally establish a religion on Proxima Centauri b, all because someone had shown the aliens a cat video. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Zix of the Methane Collective, their gas clouds swirling nervously, we should quarantine them? A hollow laugh echoed through the chamber. It came from General Kithrix, a veteran of 3 intergalactic wars, who now sported a t-shirt reading, "I survived Earth tourism," beneath their ceremonial armor. Quarantine? They've already figured out how to fold space using what they call a microwave and some leftover curry. It was during this crisis meeting that an unexpected message arrived from the warring planets of Zogtar 5 and Splibbelax 3. Their millennium-long conflict over a rather unremarkable asteroid field had escalated to the point where both sides were threatening to unleash weapons that could, in their words, look like party poppers. The Federation Council members looked at each other, a dangerous glimmer of inspiration in their collective eyes. If conventional diplomacy had failed, perhaps it was time for unconventional measures. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Captain Sarah Chen of the ESS Fuck Around and Find Out was having a rather ordinary morning, if you could call arm wrestling with a sentient black hole ordinary. She had just won through what she called creative interpretation of gravitational laws when the Federation's request came through. Sarah was an interesting choice for a starship captain. She had never actually intended to join Earth's Space Force. She had simply shown up at the wrong building for a job interview and was too polite to correct anyone when they started giving her command codes. Her crew was equally unconventional, a quantum physicist who had accidentally proved that the universe had a sense of humor, a navigation officer who claimed to be from Next Tuesday, and an AI that had developed sentience after binge-watching every sitcom ever made. A diplomatic mission? Sarah mused, reading the Federation's request while sipping her coffee, which, unknown to her, had become sentient due to exposure to the ship's experimental probability drive. Well, that sounds perfectly straightforward. Her AI, which had named itself Chad after particularly enjoying episodes of Friends, emitted what could only be described as a digital snort. "Last time you said that, Captain, we ended up adopting a baby space whale and teaching it to play jazz." But before Sarah could defend her previous diplomatic endeavors, the ship's sensors detected something unusual. The coffee cup in her hand had begun to develop its own civilization, complete with tiny, coffee-based philosophers questioning the meaning of their liquid existence. "Right," Sarah declared, carefully setting down the cup, which was now drafting its first constitution. "I suppose we'd better sort out this planetary dispute before my breakfast develops faster than light travel." Little did she know that her approach to this conflict would become required reading in diplomatic academies across the galaxy, though most students would refuse to believe it actually happened. The ESS Fuck Around and Find Out was a peculiar vessel, even by human standards. Its hull was painted in what Sarah insisted was tactical rainbow camouflage, arguing that since space contained every color, being every color at once was perfect camouflage. The ship's design appeared to defy several laws of physics, though the engineering team maintained that they had simply asked the laws politely to look the other way. As they approached the disputed sector, First Officer Dr. Rajesh Ray Patel was conducting his daily quantum probability calculations. Ray had a unique approach to quantum mechanics. He treated it less like a science and more like a negotiation with reality. "The universe," he often said, "is really just waiting for someone to ask nicely." "Captain," Ray called out, his eyes fixed on readings that seemed to be writing themselves in interpretive dance. "You might want to see this. The probability of our mission succeeding is, well, it's coming up as a picture of a rubber duck wearing a top hat." Sarah nodded sagely. "Ah, much better than last time. Remember when it showed us that image of a confused spatula?" The bridge crew had learned to take such quantum irregularities in stride. Their navigation officer, time-displaced Terry, who still insisted he was from next Tuesday and occasionally spoiled everyone's lunch plans, was plotting a course through what he called the funny bit of space where Wednesday keeps trying to become Thursday. As they neared the conflict zone, the true scale of the situation became apparent. The fleets of Zogtar 5 and Spliblex 3 had arranged themselves in what could only be described as an aggressive game of three-dimensional chess, if chess pieces were armed with weapons that could turn planets inside out. "Chad," Sarah called to the ship's AI. "What's your analysis?" The AI, who was currently binge-watching Earth soap operas while simultaneously running the ship's systems, responded, "Well, Captain, it's like that episode of Days of Our Lives where Brad discovers his evil twin is dating his ex-wife's clone, except with more antimatter weapons." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And your suggested course of action?" "Obviously, we need to create enough drama to distract them from their own drama. It's basic soap opera mechanics." The captain smiled, a smile that had once made a black hole nervous. "Chad, send a message to both fleets, use the frequency they've been using for their insults, and let's play them some Earth music while they wait." "Any preferences, Captain?" "Something classic, something that will really make them question their life choices." And that's how both alien fleets found themselves listening to "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley, played on repeat, while the human ship casually positioned itself between them. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Both sides immediately demanded to know if this was some form of psychological warfare. The truth, which was far more terrifying to them, was that this was just humans being humans. Sarah stood on her bridge, a mug of potentially sentient coffee in one hand and a rubber duck, which had mysteriously appeared after Ray's quantum calculation, in the other. The alien fleets hung in space like two groups of angry hornets, their weapons primed and their commanders probably developing several new types of ulcers. "Right then," Sarah announced to her crew. "Time for Phase 2. Terry, is the cargo bay ready?" Time displaced. Terry glanced at a screen that appeared to be showing next week's weather. "The boxes are ready, Captain. Though I should warn you that next Thursday we might regret this. Or we already have. Tenses get a bit fuzzy when you're from next Tuesday." The cargo bay of the ESS Fuck Around and Find Out contained two identical enormous metal containers. They were, in fact, completely empty, save for some fairy lights that Sarah had insisted on adding for dramatic effect. But the beauty of an empty box, as any cat owner knows, is that it contains infinite possibilities. Or, in this case, infinite anxiety for two warring civilizations. Sarah activated the ship's communication system. Her voice, when it broadcast across all frequencies, carried the same tone one might use to announce tea time at a particularly posh garden party. The fact that she was simultaneously juggling her rubber duck and trying to prevent her coffee from establishing a space program only added to the effect. "Good morning, afternoon, or whatever time adjacent concept your species recognizes," she began cheerfully. "I couldn't help but notice you've all been having a bit of a tiff. Now, normally we humans wouldn't interfere, but your constant bickering is disturbing some rather lovely space whales who are trying to perfect their jazz solos." The response from both fleets was immediate and consisted mainly of various alien expletives that the ship's translator rendered as %, with helpful footnotes explaining the anatomically impossible suggestions. Now, Sarah continued, unfazed. "There's no need for that sort of language, especially not that last bit about the quantum harmonics and the rubber chicken. That's just rude. Instead, we've brought you each a present." At her signal, the cargo bay doors opened and the two massive containers drifted majestically toward their respective fleets. The fairy lights twinkled menacingly, a feat that had taken Sarah considerable practice to achieve. "In these containers," she announced, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that somehow made it even more terrifying, "you'll find humanity's latest innovation in conflict resolution. One shot. That's all it takes. Quick, clean, and ever so efficient." Chad, who had been monitoring the alien fleet's communications, reported, "Captain, their panic levels are reaching what I can only describe as soap opera season finale intensity." "Perfect," Sarah murmured, then continued her broadcast. "Of course, you could always just not use them. Go home, share a cup of tea, maybe start a book club. I hear War and Peace is particularly relevant to your situation." The silence that followed was so profound that several crew members swore they could hear the universe holding its breath. In the tense silence that followed, Sarah's coffee finally achieved nuclear fusion, prompting her to quickly pass the mug to a nearby ensign with instructions to treat it like a developing civilization. No prime directives broken, please. The response from both fleets came simultaneously, their messages so similar they could have been twins separated at birth. "What exactly is in these containers?" Sarah's smile grew wider. "Oh, I couldn't possibly tell you that. It would spoil the surprise, though I must say the effects are quite spectacular. We tested it on an uninhabited planet last week. Or was it next week, Terry?" "Both, technically," Terry replied, checking his temporally confused calendar. "Also, I'm pretty sure it created a temporal paradox that made Tuesday feel like Friday, but that might have just been the cafeteria's mystery meat special." The alien commanders were not amused. The Zogtarian fleet admiral, a being who resembled an angry origami creation with too many edges, demanded, "How do we know these weapons are real?" "Oh, they're very real," Sarah assured them, while absently preventing her rubber duck from achieving sentience. "Though I suppose you could always open the boxes and find out. But then, of course, the other side would have to open theirs too. It's quite the dilemma, isn't it?" Chad interrupted. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple emergency communications between both fleets and their home worlds. Also, 17 different conspiracy theories have already developed about the box's contents, 3 of which involve cosmic ducks." The tension in space grew so thick you could have spread it on toast. Both fleets began to slowly back away from their respective boxes, while simultaneously keeping their weapons trained on them, each other, and the human ship that was now playing what appeared to be elevator music. "We'll just leave you to it then," Sarah announced cheerfully. "Take all the time you need to decide. Though I should mention, those boxes are programmed to self-destruct if anyone other than your respective forces tries to tamper with them. Wouldn't want them falling into the wrong hands, now would we?" As the ESS fuck around and find out prepared to depart, Ray's quantum probability calculator started showing images of peace doves wearing sunglasses. "Captain," he reported, "I believe we've just achieved what the calculations are calling a galaxy brain moment." Sarah nodded, satisfied. "Chad, play us out, something dramatic." And so, to the strains of what the ship's AI considered dramatic, a bizarre remix of classical music and cat meows, they departed, leaving behind 2 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, paralyzed by the mere possibility of what might or might not be in those boxes. In the weeks that followed, the standoff became the galaxy's most watched reality show. Alien betting pools emerged, with odds being placed not just on which side would open their box first, but on increasingly specific scenarios like accidental opening due to space sneezing, or box achieves sentience and opens itself. The Federation's monitoring station reported some rather interesting developments. The Zocterian fleet had established a rotation system where each ship took turns watching their box while simultaneously watching the Spliblaxians watch their box. The Spliblaxians, not to be outdone, had constructed an elaborate observation network that included what they claimed were box behavior analysts. Meanwhile, on both homeworlds, the situation had sparked a cultural revolution. Zogterian artists began creating abstract sculptures of boxes, while Spliblaxian philosophers wrote lengthy treatises on the metaphysical implications of unopened containers in space. One particularly popular Spliblaxian song, titled Schrödinger's Weapon, topped the Galactic charts for 3 weeks straight. Back on Earth, Sarah and her crew had become minor celebrities, though most of their interviews had to be conducted remotely, as Sarah's coffee had evolved into a small but ambitious civilization that had claimed her ready room as its sovereign territory. The funny thing is, Sarah remarked during one such interview, while negotiating trade agreements with her former beverage, we never actually had to lie, we just let them assume, and their own imaginations did all the work. The interviewer, a 7-dimensional being who had to compress themselves into 3D space for the broadcast, asked the obvious question, but what if they had opened the boxes? Sarah's smile was enigmatic. Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The moment either side opened their box, they would have lost the moral high ground. They would have been the ones to escalate, to show they couldn't be trusted. In a conflict that's lasted a millennium, being the first to blink can be worse than any weapon. 6 months after the incident, the disputed asteroid field had become a tourist attraction. Both planets, still unwilling to back down but equally unwilling to risk opening their boxes, had gradually transformed their military standoff into a bizarrely profitable joint venture. Guided tours now offered visitors the chance to see the boxes that saved the galaxy, complete with gift shops selling miniature replicas. The Federation, both impressed and slightly terrified by the human solution, began quietly recruiting more human consultants for their diplomatic corps. They did, however, institute a strict no beverages policy after several incidents involving Earth cocktails and various alien digestive systems. As for the ESS fuck around and find out, they were already off on their next mission, leaving behind a legacy of peace through carefully calculated chaos. Their ship's log for the Zogtar Sliplax incident concluded with a simple entry in Sarah's handwriting. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a weapon at all. It's just an empty box and the universe's most powerful force, bureaucratic anxiety. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, 2 empty boxes continue their eternal vigil, guarded by increasingly bored crews who have, over time, developed a friendly rivalry over who can come up with the most outlandish theory about what's inside them. The coffee civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel, occasionally sends diplomatic missions to check on them. If you enjoyed this tale of intergalactic mischief and empty boxes, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps keep the quantum probability calculator happy. Subscribe to join our cosmic crew for more adventures across the universe, from accidental diplomatic incidents to sentient beverages plotting revolution. Ring that notification bell to ensure you never miss a story. Time-displaced Terry says it's crucial for maintaining the space-time continuum, though we're not entirely sure we believe him. Share this video with your friends, or better yet, with any alien civilizations you happen to know. And remember, somewhere out there, 2 empty boxes are still successfully maintaining galactic peace, proving that sometimes the best solutions come in mysterious packages. Until our next adventure through the stars, this is your captain signing off.